Hello. Um, Thank you for that. And I'd like to welcome everybody to the third in our series of um, presentations as part of our Sustainability Month. And today, the topic is the um, how to recycle and why. And we are very pleased to have with us from Modern Disposal, Madeline Matthews. I'm sure not only is Modern Disposal part of the university contract for waste removal, but I'm sure many of us may have our various towns contracted out with Modern Disposal as well. So I'd like to welcome everybody to that. I also want to acknowledge Don Erb is with us. He's the vice chair of PSS, and Janice Jankowski, who also co-hosts the Sustainable Living Committee of PSS. So with all of that done, I think I'm going to turn it over to Madeline and welcome you, Madeline, to our group and tell us what we need to know about how to recycle and why.
Hi, everybody. So like they said, my name is Madeline Matthews. I'm with Modern Disposal. I'm going to be running through a presentation today about how to recycle and why. And then also have my colleague, Fenna Mandelang, with me. She is the operations manager at our recycling facility, BRE. So she knows a lot about recycling. Everything that I know about recycling has come from a conversation I had with Fenna. So now we have the source of all of my information here. So she's going to be very useful for answering your questions, and she can answer probably almost any question you have. That being said, if you can hold your questions until the end, that'd be very helpful. Like I said, because Fenna will probably be answering your questions, not me, but I'll answer what I can. So I'm just going to share my screen right now. If it lets me. Here we go. Okay. So the first thing I talk about when I talk about recycling is actually the 3 R's, which I'm going to assume most people are familiar with, and they are reduce, reuse, and recycle. And while this might seem like a rudimentary entrance into the world of recycling, it's actually really important because people often forget reduce and reuse. And the thing that a lot of people don't know is that this is actually in order of suggestion of how you should actually go about dealing with your materials. So first, you should reduce what you can, so you're not buying as much and producing as much waste. Then reuse what you can, so that anything that you have in your home can be used for a second purpose rather than going into the trash or into the recycling. And if neither of those options exist, recycle everything you can and make sure that you're recycling it correctly. So first up, reduce. So basically reduce just means cut back on waste, whether it be the waste of resources or items that aren't recyclable. On the resources side, it's really important to try and cut back on your usage of water, electricity, and fuel. And there's a few ways you can do that that I try and do in my home as well. For water, you can use low flow shower heads and toilets, and you can also repair leaky faucets and hoses. Now, this stuff isn't just good for conserving water, it's also good for your utility bill, and also depending on where you live, and if you're a renter or a homeowner, you can even get like tax credits if you put low flow shower heads and toilets in. For electricity, make sure that you shut down your computer and unplug any idle electronics. These are actually called vampire electronics because even if something is still plugged into the wall and it's idling, if it's not completely shut down, it is still using electricity. And again, this isn't just good for conserving electricity and resources. It's also very good for cutting down your electricity bill. And then also trying to use LED light bulbs and turn off the lights whenever you leave a room. Same thing there. LED light bulbs last basically forever and they're very energy efficient. And I know that I have been guilty my entire life of leaving lights on when I leave a room, and I'm now being more conscious of it. When I was little, my mom used to follow me around the house and turn off the lights because I would leave a path of wherever I went through. So that's something I've had to be more conscious of as I've started to try and live more sustainably. And once you start doing it, it becomes a habit, right? And they say it takes, what, like 28 days to make a new habit. So if you can just make sure you turn a light off when you leave a room for 28 days, it's going to be your new habit. On the fuel side, try and drive only when you need to and avoid idling. So if you're picking someone up or something, instead of idling outside their house, turn your car off as long as it's not freezing cold and you need that heat on. And then also only heat your home when absolutely needed. Again, this is something that I used to be really bad about. Instead of grabbing a blanket or putting on a sweater, I would just turn the heat up. So especially now with all of us being home more, I think it has probably caused a little bit more of an energy drain than most of us have thought, but try and make sure that you're only heating your home when you really need to. And on the product side, Try and buy products with limited packaging or bring your own packaging. This has obviously been something that we've all adapted to in grocery stores as far as the bags go. So to avoid paying for the extra couple cents per brown paper bag, we've all started bringing those reusable bags. Now that plastic bags are no longer an option. And while that's a great step, there are other things you can do, whether it's, picking an item that has a little bit of plastic instead of a ton of plastic, or trying to bring your own packaging and buy items from the bulk bins instead of buying the prepackaged ones. Little changes like that in your grocery shopping habits can really make an effect. So to reuse, instead of disposing of an item, try and find one more use for it in your home. And when you start looking up options for these items to reuse, you'll be amazed at how many things we throw away or recycle that can easily have another use. For example, try to use old envelopes and just cover up the old addresses with labels. You can also reuse jars to store food or any miscellaneous items that you have. I know for me, I drink out of mason jars. They are my only water glasses in my house. And I also use them for salad dressings and random things that I make in my home that I want to store something in instead of buying that plastic Tupperware. Reuse brown paper bags and newspapers as wrapping paper or packing material. My sister actually does this every year at Christmas. She finds any paper she has in her recycling bin and uses that to wrap her presents instead, as long as it's in good condition. You can reuse old clothes as rags or material for sewing products. You can reuse foil and egg cartons in craft projects. My dad actually uses them to sort out his different nuts and bolts and screws and things in his garage. Reuse scrap paper as note paper. And again, if there's some writing on it, you want to cover up with a label. It's the same thing as with the envelope. And finally, donate goods that are reusable. So while donating is technically a form of recycling, when we talk about recycling, we mean what's going into your recycling tote that our drivers are picking up every day. So really, when we talk about reuse in the donating world, it just means, you can give those things an extra life instead of throwing out those clothes. Otherwise they're going to go to the landfill, and that really is a waste. As long as it's wearable and somebody can use it, there is somebody in need who needs it. Whether it's clothes or old items, there's always going to be a place that will accept your gently used items to give to someone else in need. So now we know about reduce and reuse. What actually is recycling? So put simply, recycling is taking one thing and turning it into something else. Now, the actual process, though, to recycle something isn't as simple. It starts where I think a lot of us think of recycling, right? With our drivers out there in recycling trucks, picking up the totes from your home or your business. It then gets taken to our recycling facility, BRE, where it all gets sorted. And that gets sorted through hand sorting by our workers, as well as optical sorting and other types of technology that Fun I can probably tell you a lot more about than I can. Then after that, it gets put into bales and it gets sold to a mill, which is basically a facility that breaks down those materials. And that gets sold to a factory. And the factory is actually the one who makes the new recycled product. So we do everything we can to make sure that we are selling as much material as we can to a mill. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, we are sometimes limited by what the mills will accept. So if we tell you that there's not a strong market for something, that's what we mean. If there's a certain type of plastic that we used to accept 5 years ago, but now we can't, it's not because, there's something new that's happened that has made that not recyclable. It just means there's no market for it. And that means that the mills don't want it. And if the mills don't want it, it's usually because the factories don't want it. So unfortunately, while recycling isn't that's really good for our environment, it is also a business. And if we can't sell that material to a mill, then that material cannot be recycled right now. Now, at Modern, we are always on top of it. We try and sell things as much as we can. We try and keep things on hand and find a home for them. But at some point, we have to end up sending that to the landfill. So we constantly update our menu, and we also constantly update that on our website to make sure that everyone knows the most recent recycling guidelines to make sure you know what the best items are. But it's very important that you do check those regularly and make sure you're not putting things in your recycling bin that are going to end up in the landfill. So recycling only works if there is a demand for the new product. So the demand cycle basically is, if people continue to buy plastic, then there continues to be a demand for plastic. So plastic is recycled and new plastic items are made. So if we stop buying plastic and shut down that first stage of the cycle, the others will shut down as well. So it's really important that you try and Keep in mind what is easily recycled and what is more sustainable when you're shopping, and you use your valuable dollars to try and purchase items that are easy to recycle or more sustainably made. So what are the actual best items to recycle? First off, paper. Paper is very easy to recycle. All fiber products really are. That includes newspaper, office paper, junk mail, paper bags, what we call paper boards. So it's like the containers that hold like cereal and Kleenexes and popcorn, all that type of stuff, and also magazines. So we get junk mail questions a lot, but basically the general rule is if you can rip something, then it's recyclable. If something has so much plastic coating on it, it doesn't even feel like paper anymore, it might not be recyclable, but as long as you can rip something, it's fine. The only thing about paper I will say is paper is the one time that we actually want you to put a material inside a plastic bag, and that is if you're recycling shredded paper. If you're recycling shredded paper and you put that loose in your tote or in the dumpster or whatever, think about what's going to happen, right? Our drivers are going to go tip that, and the recycling that isn't shredded paper will end up in the truck, right? But all of that shredded paper is going to end up on the floor, in the grass, and if it ends up in the truck, it's probably not going to make it into the facility after it gets tipped on the tipping floor, right? Those little tiny pieces are going to fly everywhere. So if you put it in a clear plastic bag, that will make it through to the conveyor belt, and our sorters can take that off the line and open the bag and put the shredded paper into the paper bale area. But besides that, nothing goes in the bag inside your tote. As far as glass goes, the best glass to recycle is clear bottles and jars. Clear glass is the only glass right now we have a semi-strong market for. Colored glass is a little bit trickier. It's not as desirable right now. If we get colored glass, we'll try and find a home for it. But like I said before, we can't guarantee we'll be able to find a home for it because there's not a very strong market for it. However, you can always take bottles back to those bottle return centers at your grocery stores. I even saw that Target has them now. And we are trying to look into the future and hope that there will be better ways to recycle glass, because the main problem with glass is that when it really gets really beat up throughout the recycling process, and it gets broken, or it might get mixed with ceramics and become contaminated. So it's really hard to get a perfectly clean bale of glass. Whereas when you bring it to something like a bottle return center, that's treated differently because they know that that entire container is glass. So that type of stuff is a lot easier to recycle because it's not going to be as contaminated as easily. It's not going to get broken up into little tiny pieces. So if you can, bringing glass back to a bottle return center is always going to be better than putting it in your recycling bin. And like I said, we're looking to the future, and hopefully pretty soon we'll have better ways to dispose of mass amounts of glass that you collect in your home. And cardboard. So this is something else that we get a lot of questions on, and it's pizza boxes. So obviously everyone knows cardboard boxes are great. If they don't fit in your tote, just flatten them down and try and squish them in there. But pizza boxes are recyclable with us. That's not true everywhere, and it's not true with every waste hauler. So it's really important that you talk to the people who are picking up your recycling and you find out if they take pizza boxes, because across the entire country, there's a lot of conflicting opinions on whether or not pizza boxes are recyclable. I was actually doing an event yesterday, and I was talking to somebody in a different area of New York State, and she was saying that they're advising their partner company here in Western New York that pizza boxes weren't recyclable because they were told there that they weren't. And we actually got to tell them, well, no, we actually service that company and they are recyclable. So it depends on who is picking up your recycling and where they're selling it to. So that's why we always try and make sure that we say pizza boxes are recyclable. Please don't throw it out. Don't try and cut out the greasy spots. As long as you take any leftover pizza and that little paper plasticky lining out of there, we can take it and recycle it. Metal. This one I think everyone knows about. Metal has a really strong market right now. So any aluminum cans and steel and tin cans we can take. And also metal cookware, as long as there's not any plastic adhered to the metal cookware. Plastic is another big issue right now. Obviously, everyone wants to talk about plastic, but the general rule of thumb that I find the easiest is if it is a plastic bottle and the lid screws on, then it's recyclable. The other kinds of plastic outside of that, again, we'll try our hardest. Number ones and number twos are the best numbers to recycle. So if you have a 1 or 2 that's not a plastic bottle, we can try pretty hard to find a home for it, and that has a better chance. But when you talk about things like, like styrofoam and the more tricky plastics like that, and like the miscellaneous category of plastics, plastic bags, plastic film, that stuff's really hard to recycle, and some of that just straight up isn't recyclable. So if it's a 1 or a 2, there's a pretty good chance. If it's a bottle with a lid that screws on, it's gonna get recycled. Okay, so it's not recyclable. So first category is the general unaccepted metal. Now the first 3 of these, aerosol cans, propane tanks, and batteries, those are all not recyclable because they're all combustibles. So they pose a major safety risk really in any of our trucks, but especially in recycling trucks, because if you think about a recycling truck or even like a recycling tipping floor, there's a lot more kindling, you know, it's fiber products and stuff like that that's going to go up in a fire really, really quickly. Whereas, you know, in a trash truck or a trash tipping floor, you have more like food waste and stuff that's going to take a little bit longer, hopefully, to catch on fire. But these are a major safety issue. So if you can bring them back to some sort of hazardous waste event or facility, I know there's like Lowe's and Home Depot and places like that that do take batteries. And I believe there's similar programs for aerosol cans and propane tanks as well. Try and do that if you can. If for any reason you're unable to bring them back that way, it's okay to put it in your trash, but it's always better to try and divert it from the waste stream as much as possible because they are major safety issues. And as far as paint cans go, those can go in your trash, but we recommend that you make sure that they're completely dry first, because if there's any wet paint, that's an issue for us at the landfill. And also leave it outside of your tote, because if they're really heavy and our drivers don't know to expect them inside your trash tote, then they're going to pick it up and they could hurt themselves. So anything that's like overly heavy in general, not just paint cans, but really anything you're putting in your trash or recycling that's really, really heavy, leave it outside so that our drivers can be as safe as possible. Electronic waste. There are tons of e-waste recycling events now, thank God, as well as e-waste recycling facilities. So there are a lot of options in every community where you can bring your old electronics. And that's not just like computers and printers and phones, it's also Keurigs and microwaves and stuff like that. So if you can bring them back to one of those facilities, that would be very helpful to us, because it's a really big problem in our waste stream and definitely in our recycling stream. So the only thing that can go in your trash tote is going to be things like Christmas lights or other like little twinkly light type things. We can take care of those in the trash stream, but when we talk about computers and stuff like that, they really have to be taken back to an e-waste facility or an e-waste event. Clothing. This is a great example, right? Like I was saying before, technically clothing and stuff like that, it can be made into something else or be given another life. But that doesn't mean it can go into our recycling stream. You know, like I said before, the process that we do is not, you know, we can't take clothing and make that into something else. That can't go in a bale and get recycled. So even though things are technically recyclable, it doesn't mean they belong in the recycling waste stream. Styrofoam, that's what we were talking about before with plastic. Styrofoam is not recyclable. It's not just that there's not a strong market for it, it's that it really isn't able to be made into anything else. Plastic bags and film. So the major issue with these is the fact that they pose a safety hazard. It's not just that they're not a great type of plastic, which they aren't, but they also are very dangerous in our facility. They can get wrapped around mechanisms and they can, you know, put our employees in a lot of danger. So that's why it's great that now it's pretty easy to bring your recycling, your plastic bags and films to those recycling centers that take them. I can share a link with everybody if you want. I can send it to somebody. It's a very good resource, and it's all about plastic bags and film. And you type in your zip code and what you're trying to get rid of, and it gives you a place you can bring it, whether that's like your local Wegmans or Tops or whatever. It's very, very useful, and it's very easy to do. And then this one, coated fiber products. So this has gone back and forth a lot. There was a time when we could take this stuff, but right now you need a very specific type of technology to strip that plastic lining out of these fiber products. And the reason that we need that is because these things are made to contain liquid, right? Like your milk cartons, your coffee cups, Dixie cups, stuff like that. They're meant to withstand having liquid in them. And the way that fiber usually gets broken down is by going through a pulp process, which basically relies on liquid to break it down. So these aren't going to be broken down with liquid. So that means that they're going to be thrown away as trash when they get to the mill. So it's really, really important that you either try to stop buying these when you can, try and avoid those coffee cups if you can, buy milk, honestly, in plastic jugs. I know that plastic isn't great for the environment, but in this case, those plastic jugs are recyclable. So it actually is better to buy milk in a plastic jug right now than it is to buy in one of these cartons. We're hoping that eventually we can take this off of our not recyclable list. It's just the matter of we don't really get a lot of it in the facility, and we also need to make sure we can sell it somewhere that has that specific technology to strip that plastic lining off of it. So again, it might change. We hope it does, but for right now, these have to go in the trash, unfortunately. Certain glass items do not belong in your recycling tote. Light bulbs are one, and also plate glass and mirrors. Both of these are a little bit tricky even in your trash because there are very specific things you have to do depending on what type of light bulb you're disposing of. And with plate glass and mirrors, our customer service usually advises people to tape it up or something so that if it breaks, it's not going to be a safety hazard. So if you have either of these things and you're not quite sure how to dispose of them, you can totally call our customer service or just look online. There's tons of resources, again, online that can tell you how to dispose of things correctly. Wood items. This is a lot like clothing. Even though wood can be made into something else, it can be put into our recycling waste stream. Same thing with yard waste. Yard waste is compostable, and people often think that compostable and recyclable are the same thing, but it's very, very different. And this is obviously not great for us because it contaminates everything else in the recycling truck and on the recycling tipping floor. So please make sure that you either put that in your specified yard waste containers or bags, or you try and compost it at home or use it for something at home. Medical waste and syringes, again, these are a major safety hazard and they're also not recyclable. But even though they might be made of plastic or metal or whatever, they can't be recycled because it's medical waste. So if you're not quite sure how to dispose of it, make sure you call our customer service or your county. They should be able to give you directions on how to dispose of them correctly. And this is just a list of everything else. Couple notes on this stuff. Hardcover books. What makes them not recyclable is the actual hardcover. So if for any reason it's in too bad of shape to donate to your local library or school or something, if you just take the hardcover off and put that hardcover in the trash, then the actual pages inside can go in the recycling bin. But we definitely would recommend trying to donate it first. And things like household cleaners and chemicals, they're obviously a huge safety risk. And before you can put them in your trash, try and again, make sure that you know how to dispose of them correctly and safely so that our workers aren't being put in harm's way. So after all of that, it might seem like a lot of rules. So why is it important to actually recycle correctly? Well, so first of all, on the home front, your tote might get left at the curb and not dumped if it contains unacceptable items or contaminated items, or even if it's not packed correctly. So if everything is wedged in there too tight, that when our driver or the mechanical arm dumps the tote and not everything comes out, our driver might not realize that. So he might leave it at the curb. So it's really important that you're not just putting the right stuff in, but you're putting it in a way that our drivers can actually dispose of them. And that also goes to plastic bags as well. If you put your recycling in plastic bags, our drivers might think that it's trash and not recycling. And then any unacceptable items in your recycling carts or totes are going to have to be removed from the recycling stream and sent to the landfill. So now something that could have been disposed of in one trip in a truck now has to take multiple. So that's creating obviously a lot of excess fuel waste, and it's releasing more gases into the atmosphere. So if you can just try and make sure you're minimizing the trips that our truck has to take to dispose of an item, that's going to do a lot more good for the environment than what we call wish cycling, and putting something in your recycling tote that isn't actually recyclable. And finally, like I was just talking about, recycling incorrectly wastes energy and can cost you money in the long run. So why should you recycle? Well, recycling does conserve resources. When we recycle, materials are converted into new products, and that's going to reduce the need to consume natural resources, which will protect habitats for the future. I know it sounds kind of corny, but like recycling can save trees. Also, it protects the environment. Recycling reduces the need for extracting, refining, and processing raw materials, and all of those things create air and water pollution. So it's going to save energy, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and help tackle climate change. So that's why it's really important to try and recycle as much as you can and not just put it in the trash because you don't know where it goes. So something you probably never thought of before, landfills are limited. Massachusetts has actually run out of landfill room, and they're now at the mercy of states as far away as Ohio. So that's not going to happen tomorrow here in New York State, but it is something that we always have to be mindful of, because there's only so much room in this state to put landfills in, and we don't want to get to the point where everywhere you look, you're wondering if that's a landfill or just a hill, right? So if we can divert as much waste as possible from the waste stream into the recycling stream, that's just going to keep this from happening for us. And then finally, recycling does create well-paying jobs. So a study in 2016 found that recycling and reuse activities in the United States accounted for 757,000 jobs. And that is a little bit of an old statistic, and recycling and reuse activities are trending upwards since then. So it's likely that there's even more jobs being created. So by recycling, you are helping workers, especially local workers. And so my final core note at the end is that while recyclables are collected locally, they have a global impact. So it's very important to reduce, reuse, and recycle as best you can. And if you have any questions, you can check our Facebook page where we post a lot of information. You can check our website, or honestly just call our customer service because they have all this information. And if they don't know an answer to a question, they'll contact me or Fenna or somebody else who can answer it for them and give you the right information. So that's all I have for presentation. I do have a video I can show you guys, but I wanted to make sure we have time for questions as well.
Madeline, thank you so much for the presentation part. I believe there was one question in the chat. Janice had asked about the large plastic furniture, outdoor furniture. Are you guys still accepting those as recyclable material?
That's a fun question.
So Janice used the example of like an outdoor chair, which we would not be recycling because we don't have the market for it. We did used to bale that type of miscellaneous large plastics. But again, the market for that has dried up, and so we don't have any place to send it. We are still baling and sending the larger pails, like the kitty litter tubs, like the 5-gallon pails. So a large pail we could still recycle, but the kiddie pools or outdoor furniture or odds and ends like that, we're not able to recycle at the moment.
There's I'm sorry, Don, go ahead. You're muted.
I was going to ask Madeline and Fenna about special waste. I'm on your website right now, and I was wondering if there was an opportunity, perhaps, for you guys, because you don't handle some of those special wastes, to list partners that might do that, like Hazmat or Hazman or others that will handle those things. Or as Ken pointed out earlier, we do a lot of work with Hearts for the Homeless for textiles. Because if people are going to your website to figure out how to get rid of everything, it certainly would be a great opportunity for you guys to list those partners so that some of the things that you don't handle could get handled.
Absolutely. We are actually in the middle of a giant website redesign project. And there is going to be a new feature on our new website that's going to allow people to enter their, like where they live, like their street in their town or village or city. And it will give them information on basically everything they could need for all of their home waste. And it's going to have things like that as well. So links to places for e-waste and hazardous waste and stuff like that. So look to the future for that. We're very excited about that new feature.
That's excellent.
Do we have any other questions for our guests at this time?
There's a couple questions in the chat, and I had another one. There's a commercials that talk about don't use your laundry detergent containers because you can only recycle them twice and then we have to throw them out. Is that true?
You're talking about like a Tide bottle that your laundry detergent comes in. So we definitely collect and ship that type of plastic to mills.
Okay.
You know, I have heard statistics about a fiber can be recycled 7 times before it's too short to recycle because it gets shortened every time. I personally have not heard any statistics about how often you can recycle a plastic. Now, a lot of plastics get downcycled, right? Like plastics that you send here, a laundry detergent bottle might become a drainage pipe, right? And once it's a drainage pipe, it's probably not going to be recycled after it's a drainage pipe. We do supply a mill, not all of our material goes there, but we do supply a mill that supplies the company that does Tide. Was it Procter & Gamble or something? So there is, part of the stream is a loop. but not all of the stream.
Oh, so Jim Gordon is asking if should tape be taken off cardboard shipping boxes?
That's not a huge issue, right, Fenna?
Oh, tape, is that the word? I missed that word.
Yes,
Yeah.
tape.
Oh, yes, that's not a huge deal. I mean, it helps, but if Madeline shows you the video and you see the pile of recycling that we get every day, we get upwards of 400 tons a day. So a little bit of plastic a little bit of tape is not gonna hurt it.
Yeah, especially like in the fiber thing, we get so much fiber that, we have pretty good healthy bales. If there's a little bit of tape in there, it's not going to kill us. Now, whereas, like those, what ones we were just talking about that we don't get a lot of in, was it the cartons?
Oh, yes. The gable top cartons or?
Yeah. So like those things like the milk cartons, like even before when we could sell them to a mill to get recycled, you don't get a lot of those in the recycling bin anyways. So it's pretty hard for those to move. And then unfortunately the market on those dipped down because the technology isn't available to separate that plastic lining. But even before that, it was hard for us to fill an entire bale to sell it somewhere. Now that's not a problem with cardboard. So we have a lot of options for cardboard, even there's a little bit of tape on it.
Colored paper is okay. Okay.
Yep. Don, did you have a question?
So if a large customer or a municipality wants the non-recyclable items that you separate out to go to like Covanta to be incinerated as opposed to in a landfill, is that something that you guys is that an arrangement you can make with that municipality?
So I haven't heard of that on the municipal level. I think probably because it's so hard to separate that, because it's pretty hard to, let's just say one truck isn't going to collect an entire municipality in one trip before it has to go dump, right? I do know we have some commercial customers that are trying to be as like zero landfill as possible. So those ones are a little bit easier because it's just one truck picking things up from one location and bringing it to one location. So for that type of stuff, it is much easier to divert that waste to Covanta rather than going to the landfill. But for that type of stuff, it is something you probably talk about. But that would definitely be with more on like the sales and operations side. I unfortunately do not know all of that stuff, but I do know it is easier for commercial customers just because of logistics.
I have one more question. Are you guys can you talk to us about what you're doing, if anything, with composting?
So composting is a little bit tricky. The big thing that I learned is that a lot of the stuff that says it's compostable only means that it's compostable in those big industrial high heat facilities, right? So like you might see like on the K-Cups, it says compostable, but it will say like fine print, but not home composting. Right now, we would only have the ability to do some sort of home composting. I believe there is certain customers we work with on that, but I don't even think we do that at our facility from my knowledge. But if you're interested in talking about that, I can definitely put you in touch with our VP of post collections and sales. He handles pretty much everything that happens at the landfill, but really everything that happens after the material leaves your home. So he would definitely be the expert on that. Fenna, do you know if Alan's doing anything with that or talking about that or plans for that?
Yes, there are conversations being had, especially starting with larger customers about how we can partner and go forward on that path of, developing the organics recycling. So, but they're just
because the reason I bring it up, Fana, is because the law in New York State is changing. I think it's next year on food waste, and that is both A, an opportunity for you guys, but B, we're going to have to find a way to handle it, and so is every other large producer of food waste. So it would be good to know in the future how we're all going to do that.
Right. Yes. So we have started having those conversations about how to go forward together, into this new era, but there's no public platform that's been rolled out or anything like that, but conversations have begun around that. So,
yeah, I
and
know. Sorry. No,
to jump on your last question, some of our waste does go to Covanta, but like I said, we get upwards of 400 tons a day, and the tipping floor is all one tipping floor. So you don't there's no tracker on this 5 tons from this truck, through the system, and oh, this part of the trash came from that load, so there's no way to specifically say, oh, your trash went to Covanta, but we do send some of our trash to Covanta. Some of it goes to the landfill and sometimes it goes to Covanta.
Yeah, so if it has to be removed from the recycling stream, there's not a way to guarantee that if your materials get removed from the recycling stream that they'll go to Covanta. But if it's
I
a
get
trash
that part,
load,
but
we
but
can.
even if there's some kind of a message about what kinds of things go to Covanta and what kinds of things go in the landfill, that's helpful to a customer like us who is trying to show that we're being very responsible, right?
Yeah, so any of our residue, the things that are left over after we sort out things that we can recycle, any of that we can send to Covanta.
Mhm. I don't think there's many things that can't go to Covanta, right? Except for like safety hazard things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, radioactive things. We don't handle those things at the recycling plant. Knock on wood.
That's a good policy. Good
Yeah.
policy.
Not yet, at least. I mean, I don't know. We'll find out. But yeah, it is tricky, and it's hard because if it has to go to a tipping floor first, once it's on a tipping floor, it's really hard to determine what waste goes where. But like I said before, if it's something easy, like one truck going to one place and then straight to Covanta, we can guarantee obviously that trajectory.
We
but if it's
don't
hard-
want you guys or Joe Hickman or Steve Hanukkah to glow from radiation.
No, we don't. Yeah.
So I did receive a direct message question about seeing the tote being dumped into the same truck. And, the answer to that is that we do have split body trucks. And so there's a wall in the middle of the body of the truck. And so it might look like they dump your trash into the back of the truck, and then they will also dump your recycling into the back of the truck, but it's on 2 different sides of the wall.
It's really hard to see too. We have people like, nope, I saw that truck. It wasn't split body. I looked at it and then I call operations and it was a split body. It's really, really hard. They look almost exactly the same. So if you watch them dump both of them into the same truck, it most likely is a split body. The only other thing could be that the recycling contained contaminated materials or something that wasn't recyclable. That's the only other explanation. We don't make money if we don't recycle. Basically, we can't keep BRE running if we don't recycle. So we definitely recycle everything we can.
Is the video going to show how much recycling is left over at the end that doesn't, do you have any idea how much is unsuccessful?
That's a Fenna question.
Around 25 to 30% ends up being residue on average. Yeah. And that's weight, not volume.
Okay.
Right. So recycling
not the number of items. Yeah.
Right. So recyclable items tend to be lighter, except for cardboard or something. And so I mean, it's a large percentage and there's room to improve, but it's also always going to sort of be weighted towards the trash because it's the heavy things that end up in the trash, things that shouldn't be there, large pieces of chain or, something that is being disposed of. So bowling balls are not recyclable and they're heavy. So
you wouldn't think you have to say that, I guess, but yeah. Do we have any other questions? Do we have time for that video? It's a bit lengthy, but I think it's a great way to show the process and show the facility as well.
I know we'd like to try to keep to the hour for the presentations. Do you know how long the video is or no?
It is, I think, oh crap, hang on one second.
Well, while you're looking that up, what I'd like to suggest is we go ahead and show the video.
Yeah, I think it's like 7 minutes, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, if you're able to stick around and we happen to go past the hour, can we have that video made available to this group as well?
Absolutely, yeah, I can send the link. It's a 6-minute video, so it shouldn't be too
plenty
bad.
of time.
Show it,
Okay.
please.
Let's do it.
Alrighty, where is it? Here we go.
When you do the share screen, make sure you're doing the share audio as well.
Oh yeah, am I doing that? I think so. Oh wait, no, I'm not. Ha, thank you for doing that. I would have totally missed that. Stop share. Hang on. Let's try that again. There we go.
Difference. How can you help save the environment? It's easy with single stream recycling from Modern Recycling. Hi, I'm Mike Weber of the Buffalo Savers. Here at Buffalo Recycling Enterprises, cutting-edge technology is used to sort recyclables in a process called single stream recycling. This recycling program helps conserve our natural resources, one plastic bottle, newspaper, or cardboard box at a time. It all starts with you, making the important decision to recycle, whether at the curbside of your home, at school, or at work.
Our single-stream collection vehicles and drivers carefully pick up your recycling. With materials only needing to be placed in one recycling container, this reduces the number of trucks needed, reducing the carbon footprint that traditional recycling methods produce. This makes recycling easy and can boost participation by up to 30%. By recycling, we can reduce the amount of waste that end up in landfills. Once recyclable materials are collected, they are brought to our single-stream processing facility. Here at Buffalo Recycling Enterprises, recycling vehicles empty their contents onto the tipping floor. What looks like garbage is actually valuable recyclable materials, ready to begin their journey into becoming new products. Recyclables enter the single-stream process here in the hopper, where the materials are fed into the system onto the main conveyor. This state-of-the-art facility can process up to 25 tons of recycling an hour, 400 tons a day. Using computerized controls, the recyclables that filter through the process are closely monitored, making sure the materials are separated properly. If there are any discrepancies, adjustments can be made. All materials quickly move along conveyor belts and are filtered through a series of sorting areas. The first pre-sort area removes any non-recyclable materials and sorts out large items that are too big for the processing equipment. Trained sorters work quickly and efficiently to sort materials as they move past on a conveyor belt. The recyclable materials continue along and are further sorted by screens. The cardboard screen allows pieces of cardboard to be separated and redirects the remaining materials as they continue along the belts. These rotating discs allow the paper and cardboard to go up and move along the process, while containers and glass fall through to a lower level where those are sorted. Here at the main cardboard line, the sorter is making sure no other materials are present. After this line, the cardboard goes into a bunker before it leaves as a finished product in a bale. Trained sorters in the paper line take out any plastic, cardboard, plastic bags, wood, or metal items that may have made their way through. Did you know if everyone recycled just 1/10 of their newspapers, we would save 25 million trees a year? Next, a powerful magnet removes any steel cans. In addition to manual labor, cutting-edge technology also helps us separate the materials. A series of innovative optical sorters are used. Sensors scan on a molecular level and move materials using streams of air, separating items from the line. Paper is removed from containers. Plastic bottles are separated using the air handling system to propel these lighter weight plastics into their own bunker. These optical sorters also remove any trash that may have been mixed in with the recycling. The remaining materials come to the container line. Here, the sorter manually separates the different types of plastic. Milk jugs go into the first holding bunker. Colored plastics, such as laundry bottles, go into another bin. After the container line, the process brings us to the eddy current, which is designed to capture all of the aluminum materials. It does this by actually repelling the non-ferrous metals and throws them from the rest of the metal from which it is being separated. Once the bunkers of these different materials are filled, they are brought together through the baler. The equipment compresses the materials and ties them into bales. They are now ready to be loaded onto tractor trailers, where these commodities are now used to manufacture a variety of new products. Now everything you put in your recycling bin has been processed and is ready for use in manufacturing new materials. They really have become valuable resources. Instead of occupying space in a landfill for years to come, they can now be used over and over again. As they leave our single-stream facility, these materials are on to the next stage of their journey. Next time before you trash it, think, can it be recycled? Remember, you can help save our planet by putting it in your recycling bin instead. With modern single-stream recycling, you don't have to sort any of your recyclables. Just one bin is all you need to make a difference. You can conserve our natural resources one plastic bottle, newspaper, and cardboard box at a time.
Are you ready to make a difference? Now it's even easier to save our environment. Join me on our winning recycling team. Be a recycling hero, and you can help make a difference. Make a difference. Recycle. When you recycle, you make a choice to ensure a greener tomorrow for all of us. I'm Mike Weber, the Buffalo Sabres, and I recycle.
That's the process. It is an outdated video, but everything is still accurate.
I think some of us wish Mike Weber was back playing for the Buffalo Sabres right about now. Thank you so much. Any other final questions or comments or thoughts for the group?
Just one question for Madeline and Fenna. Are there any pieces of legislation or things that you would benefit from in order to recycle more things that we should know about and should pursue either within our committee or within on our own?
A big thing actually that Alan mentioned before, the VP of Post Collections, is always reminding us of is the bottle bill. I don't know if you're aware of that, but it basically wants to expand the types of items accepted at those bottle return centers for the same reasons I was just talking about, right? When you put glass and stuff like that into your recycling tote, it's really hard for it to get to the end of the process without being broken or contaminated by something else. So it's a much better way to recycle glass by taking it to those centers. And either they can get made into new glass items or get turned into something called processed glass aggregate, which is basically like alternative to sand and stone and stuff like that for industrial applications and like roads and things like that. So that is something that I think would be beneficial to not just us, but to everybody. Definitely try and look into that. And like I said before, bring as much as you can back to those bottle return centers. It might be a pain, but it's going to give you a little bit of money to spend on your groceries. And it's also going to really help those materials get recycled in the best way possible.
If you guys could share any model language with us on that, that would be good to get from you.
Absolutely. I'll reach out to Alan and see if he has anything for that. And we did actually just start a program too, I should mention, with Bella Rose Winery. It's a winery in Lewiston and on 104 right by our headquarters in Model City. And we have a new program there where they have a dumpster just for glass items, mainly for their glass wine bottles, the colored bottles for wine, but for really any items that anyone in the community has that can't be put in their recycling tote. And all of those glass items in that dumpster are going to be used for that PGA, that processed glass aggregate that I mentioned. So if you're in the Lewiston area, if you want to check out Bella Rose Winery and maybe also drop off some glass items, definitely do that. It's a really cool program we just started.
Thank you.
Of course.
All right. Finally, I see a plug in the chat from Tom with regards to a Facebook group called Buy Nothing. He has there a group where people give away items they don't want anymore for free, never a cost. I don't know, Tom, if you want to jump in and add anything more to that or not. I'll pause a second to see if you want to add anything. We see you're unmuted, but we don't hear you. All right, I would just encourage everyone to take a look at that as well, that Facebook group. All right, well, with that being said, I want to thank our guests, Madeline and Fema, for being here with us from Modern Disposal for an excellent presentation. Totally love the video. It's really cool to see how all that stuff gets separated. Before everybody leaves, just want to remind y'all that in 2 weeks from today, because we've got a little thing called commencement happening next weekend. But in 2 weeks from today, we're going to be continuing our series of presentations where we're going to have Mr. Mike Mosser, I believe is his last name, from EV Charge Solutions, and we'll be discussing and reviewing electric vehicles and your future. So hopefully we'll look forward to seeing you guys there in 2 weeks. And thank you again. Everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see y'all on Monday. Take care.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.